Welcome to our altered book craft tutorial. We have take-home kits to go along with this tutorial available at the adult reference desk, made up of old or damaged books that we, for one reason or another, are unable to keep. While I was choosing from a varied selection of books and every kit is different, I tried to have each kit include a few types of books. Each kit should include 2 hardcover books, 1 paperback book, and 1 book which was likely to contain illustrations of one kind or another. These are rough guidelines though, and each book kit will have its own unique surprises. We're going to be looking at 5 different altered book crafts today: Blackout Poetry, Found Poetry, Paper Roses, Book Sculptures, and Folded Book Crafts. The supplies I recommend for these projects are a pair of good scissors, a thick marker of some kind, stick glue, a toothpick or a similarly shaped object, and a hot glue gun with glue sticks or some other type of liquid glue. So we're going to start off with Blackout Poetry, and Blackout Poetry is just finding words or phrases that interest you from the page and blacking out the rest in order to make something new. And you can just flip around the pages until something jumps out at you, and then you can start marking out the words that don't fit with what you want. And then at the end, you have your new poem. Next, we're going to try another form of found poetry. This time we're going to be finding words or phrases that interest us, cutting them out of the book, and arranging them into poems or prose. There's a little more flexibility with this because you're not limited to a single page or to any particular order. You can find the words wherever they are in the book and make something new out of them. Now, I find it helps with the cutting to rip or cut the pages out of the book first. And I didn't have any particular words I was looking for. I was just scanning the pages and cutting out words I thought might make good poems. But if you're trying to make something specific, you could read ahead and mark the pages that have the words you're looking for ahead of time. And it ends up being pretty fun. It's surprising what you can find, even when you think you know what to expect from a book, and how you can give these words entirely new contexts. And you can take this a step further by arranging your newfound poems onto something else and gluing it together, so the pieces aren't just floating around. You could also find illustrations in old books, use pretty scrapbook paper, old photographs, or you could even make your own art. I've seen examples where people draw or paint on another page from the book they took the words from. I'm not much of an artist myself, so I'll just rely on my lucky find here. Now what I have here is an old kids book introducing famous artworks, which is too damaged to continue to be of much use to the kids, but it has some great looking pieces on sturdy board book material that's perfect for this kind of project. Many old kids books have good art in them, and kids books tend to see some rough handling and get thrown out a lot, so they're good to keep an eye out for all kinds of crafts. Now I'm just going to glue the words onto the art I've cut out, and for the materials I'm using, I find stick glue is working great, but some materials don't like to stick together as much, so you may have to find something stronger if that's the case. And you don't need to stick to poetry or feel pressured to make something too artsy either. If you want, you can even just cut out letters individually and spell something out, letter by letter. And if you want a bit of a horror movie vibe, you can find letters of different sizes or fonts and mash them together. And then at the end, I have a very pretty, if vaguely ominous, reminder to do the dishes that I can pin to the fridge or set in the window by the kitchen sink. So next, we'll be making paper roses out of pages from old books. What I'm using for this project is an old poetry book, but you can use just about any kind of paper for this craft. I always thought a copy of an old letter would be neat, or copies of old photos. It seems like someone wanted to tear some pages out of it already, so we're going to continue that process and pick 3 pages and tear them out. First, you're going to want to trim the edges up a bit. Then, fold one of the corners into a triangle. Then, we trim off the excess that's sticking out from our triangle. Once we've done that, we fold all 3 pages over again into a second, smaller triangle. Then we unfold our stack, separate our pages, and fold them each into a third, even smaller triangle. We separate them first because the smaller we fold, the more unwieldy a large stack of paper becomes, and the less willing it is to fold, so it's usually easier to unstack them first and make the smallest fold separately. Next, we're going to make a cut, and you're going to want to make it from this end, where all the points meet, where it'll be at the center of your paper. And you'll do this with each of your triangles, making sure you're making your cut in the right place for each. Then you're going to want to trim up the sides, and what you're basically trying to do is make each one look a bit like a single rose petal. And when you unfold it, it should look something like this, with the repeating pattern of your single rose petal and the hole cut in the center of it. And once you've done this for all 3 pages, we're going to go back to our cutouts and make a few alterations. From the first page, we'll cut out just 1 petal. From the next page, we cut 2 petals, leaving the 2 petals stuck together. From the last page, we cut 3 petals. So now we have a 7-petal piece, a 6-petal piece, a 5-petal piece, a 3-petal piece, a 2-petal piece, and a 1-petal piece. 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1. Now we get the hot glue gun. And I find just some Elmer's glue works well too. The advantage of the hot glue gun, and the reason I'm using it, is because it sets fast. If you use another kind of glue, anything you glue together, you're going to need to either paperclip it together or hold it for a while. So the first thing we want to do is glue the 7-petal piece together, gluing 1 petal over another so that it ends up looking like this ring has 6 petals. And we're going to do that for each of the pieces we have, just gluing the petals from the far ends of the ring to each other. On the 2-petal piece, we change up how we glue a little bit, overlapping the edges of the petals a little rather than just gluing them flat on top of each other, so that we get a nice 3-dimensional piece like this. And for the 1-petal piece, we're going to roll it. I'm using a toothpick here to help me roll it, but you can use anything you like. A safety pin, a paper clip, or you can even just roll it against a flat surface like a tiny sleeping bag. And once we've rolled it, we're going to glue it shut. Next, we're going to curl the petals. And again, I'm using the toothpick for this, but you can also use any similar object you have. Or you can even just roll the edges a little with your fingers, but I find the toothpick easier. You're going to curl the paper over a little, and it's that little curl that really ends up making it look like a rose. And we're going to do this to all of the petals except for the single petal, which goes at the center. And once you've done that, we're going to start gluing these pieces together, starting with the biggest piece on the outside and working our way down from there. And there you have it, a nice paper rose. Next, we're going to be doing a book sculpture. And I wasn't very good at this myself, so my example is not as nice as it could be. But making it was lots of fun, and some people come out with sculptures like these that look just fantastic. So first what I'm doing is I'm going to sketch my sculpture onto one of the early pages to get an idea of where I'll be cutting. You want to do this usually 2 or 3 pages in, and we'll see why in a moment. I've chosen a snowman to fit with our library's winter reading theme, but feel free to get creative with your design. There are also patterns for different designs like snowflakes or butterflies that you can find online, which tell you where on a ruler to mark and cut each page individually. It's a very time-consuming process, but sometimes that's what we're looking for. For this video, however, I'm just going to be doing a rough sketch. Next, we're going to separate the pages of the book from its cover. This is why we don't really want to start on the first few pages. They're often attached to the cover. Then we're going to select a selection of pages. Not too many, maybe 20 or so at a time, otherwise the section will be too thick for our scissors to cut through. And then we start cutting along the shape we've sketched. Next time we make our cut, we won't have a sketch to trace, but we do have the previously cut page, so we can lay that on top of the section we're cutting to guide us. We're going to repeat this process over and over in small sections until we reach the end of the book. Alright, so we have the beginnings of our snowman sculpture, and I can already see it's not quite going to fan out the way I want it to. The fresher a book is, I find, the more likely it is to fan out well, so a new but cheap paperback or a misprint might be a better bet for a project like this. What we're trying to do is glue our back and front pages together, so the pages fan out into a circular shape. And just some stick glue is good enough for this, just make sure to give the pages time to stick. And I really wanted it to fan out a bit more, so I tried gluing some of the uncooperative pages together as well, with limited results. Then I lay a heavy book on top of the sculpture to keep pressure on the glue, and set it aside for a few minutes to dry. And while our little snowman still didn't fan out perfectly, I put a little scarf ribbon on him, and now he's a nice, festive decoration for my living room. For our last craft, we're going to be trying a folded book craft, which is similar to but a little different from our last book sculpture. We're going to start out the same way, sketching a design onto a page a few pages in, and this time I've chosen a Christmas tree. It's a little late in the year for it, but hey, I still haven't taken my tree down, so at least it'll match. And like our last craft, you can find patterns for folded book crafts online, which you can use to mark cuts and folds on individual pages if you want. And we're also going to make some cuts for this one, but unlike our last sculpture, we aren't just cutting all of the paper out of the book completely. We're just separating the lines we're going to be folding on, and trimming off the places where the folds are going to leave some overlap. This is an important difference because the folded over pieces add some volume to the pages, which is going to expand the sculpture nicely. So I folded along the lines of my sketch on the first page, sort of experimentally to see where the folds were overlapping and plan out where to make my final cuts. Then I just repeated that cutting pattern on the rest of my pages. Then we start folding, using the previously folded page for comparison, trying to keep as close to the original sketch as possible. This can be difficult to keep consistent, especially 200 or 300 times, but it does get easier with practice. And this is a time-consuming but relaxing process, good for a slow winter day, so it's nice to just sit back and listen to an audiobook or some music while you get to folding for a few hours. And there's our Christmas tree sculpture. A little wonkier than I would have liked. I didn't keep the folds as consistent as I wanted, but I did get better with practice. And that's it! Thank you for joining us for our Altered Book Craft video. If you have any awesome creations you'd like to share, tag us on our Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter platforms. I look forward to seeing what everyone makes.